going on there. Sea of Cortez is the book we'll be highlighting for this year's program. They left on the Sea of Cortez on March 11th. We will also have PBL open for our normal tours on March 11th. So March 12th, we'll be over at JACL Hall with the time start to be determined, but we'll have some activities and speakers there and various Zoom talks going through. So look forward to Cannery Road Day, some programs showing up soon. So the Monterey Public Library is working with Online Archive of California. These are to create finding aids in the digital collection. So right now we're just highlighting the finding aid basically tells you what's in our collection, what are the different topics, where to find them. And so the two that we've actually indexed in there right now are the Jeff Norman collection, which is highlighting a lot of Big Sur, and the Wing Chong Company Grocery and Squid Industry records. So the plan is to add more records into here. And what this does is that a lot of researchers look through the Online Archive of California when they're doing research and looking for historical records. And we spoke with OAC, and we could add the museums in there too in the future. So if we wanted to add in more of our historic collections of what we have in finding aids and link it out, that way it's just more accessibility and allows people to just see what our collections are. OAC is no longer hosting the content themselves in terms of uploading files, uploading videos, uploading like books or pictures. They don't do that anymore, but what they do is the finding aid so that we could then link it out to our website, our catalog, and all of that. So this is just a way for us to increase awareness of what collections we have here in Monterey. And connected to that, also, we're looking at getting into a contract with a content management system with the library. And right now, our content management system for museums is Past Perfect. And it's a local kind of content with a limited number of license and subscriptions that allows us to store our digital collections, to put in like who the photographer is, what the size, all of this kind of information about our collections. But the content management system we were looking at is an outward facing system for the library, and possibly could expand that out to the museums in the future. And what this allows us to do is to digitize our collections of photos and newspaper clippings that a lot of historians are really looking for this kind of information, putting it outward on the internet so that people can find the photos and say, I want a copy, and order a copy of one of our photos, so we can make it so that people cannot save it or download the image, and they can't download a high resolution scan of a photo without ordering it directly from us. But this just gives us a wider access where people come in generally and say, do you have photos of this kind of topic? And usually we're connecting with Jordan Museums or Andres here in the California History Room. And I think these things will be of interest for our museums as well. The Young Readers Mural dedication is scheduled for February 18th at 2 p.m. And registration is available right now on the library website. And I created some promotional items for sale with proceeds to benefit the museums. There's some Monterey Angels cards over at the library. There's some digital designs, some Monterey Angels holographic stickers, and PBL shirts, which are coming in pretty soon, and other items coming in shortly. So with that, any questions for me before we turn it over to Jordan?
I happened to see some of the items that we were in for a meeting about the mural, and I must say they're very impressive.
Thank you, Commissioner Sovereign. I just think a lot of these things help bring awareness, which is the big thing, is that bringing awareness to our angels and our collection and the PBL is really the thing for me. Is like getting people to be thinking more about our Monterey Angels or thinking more about our museums. So it's a promotional piece for me too.
Do we have to do anything before I start talking, or is it because it's a different region? Oh, all right. Let's see. So this was a lot calmer of a month for me, which was nice, other than all the storms that we had. But luckily we had no storm damage, so that was nice, except for there was one tree that fell down in the lower Presidio Park, which left a big hole. Fortunately, there were no Native American artifacts or anything found, so it ended up not being an issue, and our other divisions with the city have filled in the hole and taken care of that. So we're very grateful that that did not cause any problems. Let's see, one of the things I'm most excited about in this report is that the Northeast Document Conservation Center came out and conducted a free consultation of the Colton Hall Museum and the jail and Gordon House and the vault. And what they did is they interviewed both Director Edwards and I, and on site we did walkthroughs, and basically was just it was a emergency preparedness consultation, and it was to go through to make sure that that we had certain things in place, that if there's an emergency, this is what should happen, or if humidity is high, then we should be taking care of this. And so we're still waiting to get the preliminary report back, but everything should be done and finalized by March. And so I'm very happy that they were able to come do this. We're working on them to come to the Pacific Biological Laboratories as well. And so we're waiting to hear back on that. As I mentioned, with all the storms, we actually had a decent turnout for the free Saturday tours in January. I was not able to make it because I was out sick, but we still had 55 visitors come through, even though it was raining. And I would like to thank Director Edwards and Monterey Public Library Admin Assistant Francesca for covering for me that day, and for our docents who came out in the rain as well. And let's see. So Buffalo Soldiers exhibit update. So basically I have two updates from this last month. One is Director Edwards and I dropped off the coat that we have to go on display for the exhibit to a local seamstress, where it's getting form fitted so it looks professionally done. And that should hopefully be returned within the next week, was the estimated date. And what else? Other than that, we're still working on the exhibit. We run into small setbacks, trying to figure out spacing, other pre-existing exhibit space that we have now decided to kind of take down some old photos and make them smaller and put new photos in the current spot that's going to go there. So we're waiting for paint, and from there, then once we get a mannequin back and we get the other mannequin that's there all ready to go, then we can assess what we're going to do with that exhibit space. So depending on all of that availability and paint being finished, it could be another couple months or so. But I'm actually been able to work on it, so it's nice, instead of just kind of every now and then doing pieces on it. And then related to that, the interview that was conducted on me back in December from KSBW went on air on January 23rd. And we've already gotten some feedback where people have seen it and they're forwarding on to ancestors of Buffalo Soldiers and other people who are interested in that may be able to give us information. So we're really grateful that they conducted this interview, because it is bringing this history to light. And that is the main purpose of that. So that is everything, the highlights of last month. If anyone has any questions.
I have a question about the emergency preparedness.
Mhm.
So about 5 years ago, I was involved along with the city and state parks in it went on like 3 days, and that over a period of time. So you're aware of all that, because I know Dennis was there and other city staff people were there, part of that.
I was part of that.
Oh, you were part of that.
Yeah, Chalet and I were a part of that as well. So I have those binders.
Very
Bill,
good.
I have all that information. They just need to be updated. And so
Yeah.
we shared that information with I believe it is Jason.
Excellent.
Yeah. And so we had a very good base. And so that he went through and he's going to make recommendations of certain things, like you shouldn't have this stacked as high, or these shelves need to be this much, space or certain height off the ground and things like that. And so For disaster planning, we have a pretty established plan, but there are just things like Brian and I on our end have to do with getting together with fire and police and saying like, these documents are stored here. Don't just blast it with fire or water if it's a fire. Spray it instead of just, fan it out. So just things like that we have to do on our end. But overall, we have a good plan in place.
Very good. Goes item number 4, select ad hoc subcommittees to collection assessment for preservation. That's
All
Brian.
right, that's me. All right, so we're going into having there was another grant for a collection assessment for preservation through the Foundation for Advancement in Conservation, that's FAIC. We have 2 different assessors that are going to be coming by. One's focused on collections, one focused on facilities for Colton Hall, Old Jail, and the Vault. And we would like to create a temporary ad hoc subcommittee for 2 commissioners for the assessments from March 6th and 7th, when we will have these 2 assessors out here and look for draft report and to work further on the draft report from the consultants. So with this project, basically what we want to look at is very similar to what Jordan was talking about just a bit ago about, the collections and everything through the NEDCC, but this is also, I think, looking at the storage of our collections in our vault, because we do have quite a bit of historic photos in there, and how are we doing our presentations there in Colton Hall, the lighting on old documents, how are we keeping things, what is the condition of it? And I know we do have some older condition reports from the old jail, I think it's 2016, and there are some from Colton Hall, but just having these up to date. And this is something that I think having, because we're looking at some type spaces like the old jail and the vault, which are pretty small, I was thinking 2 commissioners there would be great to have. So we have some more awareness of what's going on in the vault, because we talk about it quite a bit. We talked about the vault and the old jail and these sites, and I think having 2 commissioners out there to help reach out with us and work with the consultants on a plan or just on the results. So with that, any questions? Or that my recommendation, though, it's just 2 commissioners on that.
Yes.
I've got time available in that period. I'm fine.
Can- Oh.
So how many people do we put on there? 2.
I just wanted to clarify about the timing. So that's a Monday and a Tuesday. Is that all day Monday and Tuesday, or what?
Let me verify on my,
You guys can do it. I
It's-
finally have Tuesdays off, so if
it's pretty much all day. It is a 2-day, yeah, it
9 to
is.
5 kind of thing.
Yes,
Okay.
they'll be coming in. Both of them, I believe, are coming from the Bay Area. So that's I'll look at this.
I don't have Mondays off, so go for it.
Yeah, it's all day, both March 6th and 7th.
And so I think we have 2 volunteers, right? I think that's good.
Perfect. Okay,
Mhm.
I got what I need. So I'll connect with you guys and then on any next steps, and we will work together on this. Okay,
I think item number 5 is also Mr. Brian.
perfect. So the NCIP projects for fiscal year 22-23 and the submittal process for fiscal year 23-24. The submittal process is online right now, so I want to highlight that. But there are different projects of interest for the MCAC through the NCIP project proposal from 22-23. And any projects that were not funded are going to be listed on the 23-24 schedule. So for people to vote on. So there were basically several projects, and I have those on the next attachment. You'll see on page 16. There's year first submitted. There's also, and then the 22-23 NCIP ranking on the right. I don't have these in any specific order, but as I mentioned at the last commission meeting, we're at about ranked 30. The top 30 items were funded for this year. But We see on here items like Cannery Row Worker Shack, ring number 47, Hartnell Gulch Stream Restoration is 122, Lower Presidio Walkway Phase 2, 97, Slope Monument Repair Restoration 89. That was first highlighted back in 2011. Cannery Row Public Restroom Design, and then this one, this one does have a note on it that there was recommended a restroom study instead for all of kind of the area rather than specifically Cannery Row. Bruce Harris Way lighting upgrade at 73. Historic Monterey Master Plan for Art 92. Public Art Security Plan was 45. Police and Fire Honor Garden 64, and Shoreline Park Fish Hopper Restoration Historical Signage 71. So anything that is, those are the projects that are going to be of possible commission, museums commissioner interest, as well as other items, of course. But these ones are specifically kind of museum related or cultural arts related. So with that, if there are any other additional projects that we want to push forward, I think commissioners would be pushing those in themselves. So you would be putting them in as something as an individual through the commission, through the NCIP process. And there's just a document here you see on page 17 that shows what that document actually looks like. And you'll find this on the NCIP website as well for the city. And so we have a couple projects that I think would be of interest that I would see if any commissioners are interested in these. So I will list these out. One is preservation and maintenance of the old jail, tied to the repair of the moisture penetration and material deterioration. There's damaged plaster at the interior of the jail. The last historic building report from 2016 that I read, the stone there is very solid. The stone on the old jail is very solid. The connector, the pointing between the old jail and Colton Hall does need work, and there was funding approved, I believe, in 2019 for repointing Colton Hall in the amount of $158,000. We're not sure if that's enough. We'll have to figure that out with additional studies. But this would be, there's leaking joints, masonry, wood glazing, possibly any painting, something on that old, funding on that old jail. But if you go inside the old jail and you walk off, you'll see that large pieces of plaster are being picked off or fallen off on the inside. So there are concerns on that about deterioration on that. So having a project to restore or even doing preservation maintenance. So the preservation maintenance is not like a full restoration kind of a process. It's really about getting it to the point where we can safely have it open on the weekends like we do right now. Also highlight the Monterey Angels. And I think as I've moved here and talked to a lot of people, there are a lot of community members that have very fond memories of our Monterey Angels collection. And what we're running into is these are pretty much all on 1/4 or 3/8 inch plywood sheets. They're pretty thin plywood sheets. And when we have those heavy winds and rain like we had this storm season, those act like sails. And if they don't fly off, they can crack, and they crack because the wind is stronger than the wood and the pole. So they're pushing against these street light poles and cracking. I know we had at least one that fell off on Del Monte Avenue, and there was a piece of on the bottom still mounted up there. And Jordan and I saw the angel up at Ryan Ranch. But those kind of things where we're concerned about the art. There's the art component, and then there's the holiday decoration component, where they were originally created for holiday decorations. But at this point, we've got ones from 1956, 1973, 1999. They're also an art component for it, for basically keeping these. And the ones we have, generally we house them on state parks. State Parks comes by and picks them up every year and puts them on the side of the building. The library has one. Colton Hall has two that we put up there. And when they're inside or on the side of the building, there's less issues with them kind of being damaged, I would see on that side. So the thought that I have on this one is to do basically a replica version, so hanging up on our street posts, and do them on what's called an ACP panel, which is an aluminum composite panel. So aluminum panel, you can put it on just aluminum itself or like another core, and do a high gloss vinyl, just do a photo of it on the side, and have it mounted in like a channel mount. And what this would allow us to do is easier mounting. And if something were to damage that aluminum panel, we have the original. We still have the originals in our collection, and it allows us to basically safely display the originals, because if you look at this listing from our last ranking that we had done, and this was, I believe, I don't think I marked it here, but I believe it was either 2016 or 2019. Rank number between 1 and 5. At unrestorable, we had 19. So we have 19 that will never leave the garage right now for display. Between 1 and 2, between unrestorable and restoration needed, we have 7. With restoration needed at 2, we have 12. Between 2 and 3, this is between the restoration needed and fair at 16, and fair at 10. Between fair and good is at 7, good is 9, and excellent is 13. So really, when we're looking at, even if we did at the low end and looked at with this collection of doing replicas of the low end collections, the ones that are unrestorable or not in good enough shape for us to house, because a number of them have cracks throughout or have had poor restoration jobs. And I don't see us mounting those on the streets. And the 1973 versions are actually larger, and the wood is much thinner, and those ones crack really easy. So those ones are really in the storage and they're not being displayed. So that's why I was thinking, like, if we created a go to scan, get high quality photos, digitally touch up any cuts or breaks or anything like that on there, but you actually have a photo of the image, you put it on the ACP panel, you highlight those out. And if we wanted to put the actual angels out on display, like inside of buildings, inside Colton Hall, inside the library, inside, our state parks buildings, we can still continue to do that on the ones like that, where we know that they're going to be safely out there. But really, I'm concerned about posting the originals on the streets with any kind of damage that could happen. And right now we have our utility box art program, and I know this is something that's gone through the Museums Commission already, and we do have we have a policy on this, but we haven't really implemented it recently. There are 4 painted utility boxes and 3 vinyl wrapped utility boxes in Monterey. There's no funding right now to support this. So anything that's done by this would be funding to support like a vinyl wrap for it, where people come in and say, okay, I want to put in this is my artwork, and they would submit it, and then you can get it professionally done and wrapped, so the person is not painting at an intersection of a street, because I think painting at the intersection of a street could lead to some risk issues right there. But if you were to submit something to the commission here and say, okay, we have 5 per year or 10 per year, something along that line of how do we choose utility box art, and then have it actually paid so the person's not paying out of pocket for doing something like that. So we know we have some control of how it's done. So those are 3 of the kind of staff proposals for possible NCIP projects. And just wanted to throw those out there for the commissions. If anything is of interest, I'm happy to answer any questions with this, but
I have one question about the angels. Maybe at some point, some of the older ones, the ones you can't exhibit anymore or put out on the street anymore, perhaps they could be exhibited sometime, like in the conference center around Christmas time or before, people can see them. And I think people would like to see them, the older ones too.
yeah, one of the projects I proposed for CSUMB, the students and service learners, to come out and actually do is to get photos of all of them.
Yeah.
Just because we do have some older photos on there, but I want to get a nice clean background and have a great inventory of them, and then start getting them more out there and getting them into whether that be partnering with one of our local museums as well, or because I will say the Alvarado Gallery is going to be quite small for all the collection that we have, but I think it's definitely a possibility for us.
And then,
And on that too, would the average person be able to tell? They wouldn't even be able to tell it was a different angel if that was to go through. Like the aluminum angel would look identical to what we've been seeing, only maybe upgraded.
Probably just pretty much the background, because most of those angels are painted some are painted black on the back side of them. Some are still wood on the back. It's just, they're just different. So some of them do have the wood. And I think the majority of them, they also have a certain routing. So like if you go to the 1956, it's basically the same kind of shape.
Mhm.
And so if you did it on an ACP panel or aluminum panel, they could route it to that exact shape. And because all of them, you have so many of them with the same one, you basically say, okay, this is the mount, this is the size. And so that's where I was thinking, it's just like, it looks like it's a photo reproduction, and the back will just have a different mounting system and channel. Because I do think that if you look at how they're mounted right now, there's basically two mounts. So there's like drilled holes in the chest and near the bottom of the base of the dress. So I think that there may be some digital work to basically clean that up so it looks seamless on the front, because the mount would just be on the backside with a channel mount.
But just the average person walking by would not see, it would not look like a tinny version. It would just look like what we've always had.
I believe so,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
And is there I mean, it seems to me there's a safety issue with them blowing down too.
Yeah.
Is there, I mean, there was no one got hurt when.
No one got hurt,
Okay.
and I think it was more of there was, that was around the area where we had several down trees
Hmm.
as well, over on Del Monte Avenue near the seaside border.
Hmm.
And there were several trees in the area. I think we were having when we had that really heavy wind, and the trees were going down in different areas. So it was just that it just kind of
Went
broke.
along with that, yeah.
Yeah, it broke, it was clear off the mount. So it was,
I have a question that I'm sure you cannot answer. Do we know how valuable the collection is? Is this, because that would influence how much effort and expense?
we don't do our own kind of evaluation of our
Right.
value for our collection. And I don't believe they're insured for any kind of amount that I'm aware of. So we would have to get them appraised. And I feel like specifically because they're Monterey, that there's a lot more sentimental value than there might be
Mhm.
financial value for these items, because
Right. I think it might be worth getting them appraised just in case someone comes in and says this is, like Grandma Moses' work. But probably not, but it might be worth knowing that.
I personally feel that particularly the older ones are priceless. I mean, we must preserve those some way. And
Well, the other thing that just occurred to me is that if they are valuable, then you might be able to get some grant money to restore and preserve them.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think we've gone through I will say the last two times we did the restorations, which were 2007 and 2016, those were done by Crozier Studios, and Crozier Studios has closed down as far as I know. But when we did those, and those were basically some minor touch-ups and putting on some cleaner and putting on a new glaze and doing everything as minimal. So basically she was cutting out the metal foil to the exact shape, or just doing very, very minimal on there. Where in some of the earlier restorations that were done in the 1980s or late 1970s or even late 50s by different places, including MPMA, the Museum of Monterey Peninsula Museum of Art, now MMA, they did some of those. That's when they actually changed the color of the face. They changed the smile, they changed the eyes. So there were some that were done in certain years that were more in terms of like, rather than doing a restoration, it was really changing what the look of the angels would be. And so that I would always be cautious with like choosing the right restoration, because you want to keep the authenticity of them. And that's why I think that, like, as much as possible, keeping the ones that are in a very kind of poor state, keeping those in a collection where either we just have those for exhibitions, and or indoor with specific rules of having us like lend them out with on that side. Just because, as you mentioned, Commissioner Sovereign, they're priceless. They're priceless to the people of Monterey, and the artist has passed away, so we can't reproduce these either or get her input on that kind of aspect. So that's where I think, the ones that we have that are quite a bit older, and I think even the ones that are number ones and twos, a lot of them are the 1973 ones too. Those are the ones that you and I looked at. The large ones.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, this one's I think any kind of proposal that I would see for NCIP, I think people would have to understand what the value is in terms of why put in a replica and what we would do with the originals. Because I think people still want to see the originals. They still want to see what's going on there. So I think just if we were to really clearly state that this is so we can preserve the art component of it. Because to me, the decoration, the holiday decoration component is we can have the holiday decoration component, but the art component is the part that we need to preserve.
In terms of decoration, I think we might go to the businesses and say, you know, if you want one of these in front of your place, make a contribution to replacing what we have with something that will not be a disgrace.
We actually talked about that. The thought was we could do an adopt an angel to local businesses where they can put it in, like if it's a restaurant, it's right in the waiting area, that it's inside, not outside, and it's protected and they have to sign a waiver. And then the, you know, adopting it, the funds go to restoration. So yeah, that's one of the things we have talked about.
So there are other avenues outside of NCIP for this, of course, but I do think that, as I've said, I think that over time that we're going to have to come up with a plan for these for the future for us to know how do we want to display our angels. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Jordan, we had 14, was it 14 or 16 displayed on our streets this year?
I believe it was 14.
14. So that gives you a sense of how many were just displayed on the streets. And then we had a number around that for the state parks. So the state parks, I believe, had about 14. They had 9? I thought you told me more.
Yeah, they
So-
had 9. It was supposed to be 10, but it's missing.
Okay, there you go. So there are some, yeah. So when they get missing or they get shipped back and forth, they get put in a truck, because these things get put in a truck. They get set up by a contractor, they get taken down, put in the truck, get shipped back, and they get shipped back, moving back and forth consistently. So that's where would like to get this a better inventory and just a better control of what we're going to do with them.
Any more questions?
I have a question on the preservation maintenance of the old jail.
Mhm.
You mentioned a report of a couple of years ago. I was just wondering if the report addressed the problem of water coming through the material from the outside when it rains to the inside. The cathedral had that problem, not with the current restoration, but the one before that, which exacerbated the problem.
Hmm.
The stone in that building has a natural flow of the water, and if you impede it or accelerate it, you cause problems. And I just wanted to know if we had that information or if we could get that kind of information before we do anything to the jail.
Yeah, we can look into that. I don't recall, it's a pretty lengthy report too, but I don't recall anything about any issues with water seepage.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
It's also just openly exposed, basically. Not all, like most of the windows except for one are sealed off. And then the jail door is not sealed off. And then above it is a grate. So it's just humidity and temp, like there's no space between there. And actually it's warmer in the jail than it is outside usually. And so that's probably an issue as well, that it's a warmer humidity. And so I'd imagine that's how the issues are coming in, not like coming through the stone, actually just being basically exposed 24 hours a day.
Okay, thank you.
At the last meeting, I believe it was, of the NCIP, I spoke to the need for our restoration work on the worker shacks. And thought I got a good reputation, reception, but apparently not quite adequate. And there is there's really a danger there of losing the material inside those buildings. Now, I don't really have an idea, Jordan, or do we have, is that material replaceable?
The materials inside, like
Yes, inside the shacks, because they're penetratable at this point.
I mean, they're protected, they're alarmed. The buildings are, each individually has its own sensor. The items inside are they can be replaced if taken. There's nothing, I wouldn't say there's anything of actual value in there. It's usually what we've just been able to find, like, at antique malls, of trying to find something of the era. And I was just inside the worker shacks this week, and their insides are holding up very well. I'm not noticing any water damage, anything like that from the outside. It's usually the outside that is in worse condition. And if you're looking straight at the cannery shacks, the very far left one, there, like, the wood on the outside is noticeably, it's coming loose. And the windows are probably one of the things that need to be replaced too, because the plexiglass gets like this natural fogging that you can't really see inside.
And I'll add on that because I spoke with the past museums and cultural arts manager Dennis Copeland about the windows, because those were supposed to be made for the this seawater, the saltwater area, so that you can still look through. They're not supposed to yellow at that level. So if we do anything, we want to, even just to make it so people can walk in and look in the worker shacks, because they are, if you go by there, you'll notice they're really fogging up. Like Jordan mentions, it's harder for people to kind of actually see what's going on inside of those right now. So even at that level, getting those replaced could be just a small project, but we want to make sure that we get it with stuff that will fit our climate. So working with so if you come across any grants or anything that comes that will focus on getting those worker shacks repaired, I'd be highly interested in hearing about it.
I know this is sound kind of silly, but one of my big pet peeves when we talk about that is we use that term shack, because they're not really shacks, they were people's homes. So I always said something less than when I always hear that term. But that's just me.
I have a question. Of the items that were not funded the last time and the ones that we are now identifying, do we have any idea of what is the most critical items? They rejected how many here? 10, 15 at the last time?
Yeah.
So they may do that again, and at their meeting, they may have no conception of what's more important than the others.
Yeah.
For example, if the workers' housing is the most important thing, or the angels, then we may want to make that case.
Yeah, I'm going to look at a couple of these, which are basically, there's a couple basically facility kind of items, right? Facility or maintenance. One is, of course, the old jail, possibly Colton Hall, if we look into that further, if that needs additional funding for repointing, because that could be Colton Hall could actually be connected to the old jail as well.
Yeah.
Because if we were looking at, because those buildings are semi-connected, so if there were a project that was basically Colton Hall and old jail, some kind of maintenance on there that would be more of like a preservation and maintenance of the Colton Hall and old jail, that may help. That's one of our highlighted items. I would say the Cannery Row workers' homes, those are another highlight, because I do think that those, we're lucky on these last storms, that there wasn't any major damage. People had damage all throughout the peninsula from rain and water, but those things there, those houses there, there's the paint is coming off again, and the wood is getting soft in some spots. And so doing some selective kind of repairs on there to make sure that they can withstand future storms and withstand all of the traffic that they get would be fantastic. Other than that, I think in my mind, the Monterey Angels, I think people would be interested in that. And the slope monument, I know there's consistent issues or thoughts about that with the weathering. But I really don't know at this point. I mean, that was first proposed in 2011. I don't know the construction or maintenance costs of that for repairing any of those stones, how that would be different, as well as working there on the Lower Presidio, which does have a lot of really, it's a really historic site for many reasons, but also it's an indigenous site. So doing any work there is going to be quite difficult to do anything there at Slope Monument. So I'd have to really look at what was designed there to do, because it's going to be very difficult to fulfill any project, I think, on Lower Presidio right now. But but I know that there were certain stones that were damaged. They have stones from all across the state. And so some of them have kind of picked off, or, they have different damages on there. So those would be on mine. I mean, some of the other items, historic master plan, the lighting, public restrooms, walkways, gulch restoration, which would be nice, but it's some of those other ones they're not pressing, because I think there are pressing needs for making sure that these historical treasures are safe and kept for future generations.
I'd like to just offer that linking the jail and Colton Hall is going to boost the cost a lot. And one thing they look at is, is this an outrageous amount of money? And doing both Colton Hall and the jail is going to be, upwards towards $1 million.
I think that was the last thing on our list.
Yeah, that's the last thing, unless any commissioners have any thoughts or comments on other projects, but happy to connect with anybody if you want more information on any of these projects.
Do we ask for public comments again here?
I have a question on that point. Dealing with something like Colton Hall, which is important to the history of the state, not just to the city of Monterey.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so what if we can't get the money from this program to fix the building? Do we have any alternatives that are workable?
Depending on the scope, I think there are often, and it also depends on the state budget, usually the state budget, because a lot of times state assembly members do have, from where I previously worked in another county, I would keep more in touch with some of those things with the state assembly members, where they would have projects that they would earmark for public services, whether that would be community centers, libraries, local grants, and those could be in the low $1 million often, because they're setting aside money in their district. So it's a district representation where the district brings something forward to the state and says, this is important to this area. So I think that's where we would, and that would be probably outside of this commission per se, but it would be something for like myself to, or somebody from the city to follow through with our legislative bodies to say, are there funds available regarding the state budget for any other kind of projects in your district? Because this is, like you say, this is of importance to everybody in the state.
Yeah.
This is of state interest. So we would like, your investment in this project. So that's where I would think the other kind of project would go through.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
There is, of course, also the city capital budget. Colton Hall is a city building. It's occupied by city employees, besides the historical. And it seems to me that it ought to be in the CCIP, they call it, I think.
All right, before I guess to wrap up, anybody have any comments? Kimberly?
Commissioner comment part?
Yeah.
Just that I went to the walking tour that you gave, that Commissioner Thomas gave at the beginning of January, and had a wonderful time.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
No comment.
Huh?
Not today. Thank you.
Mike?
No comment.
I have one thing, and just me personally, so I realize this committee doesn't work this part, but I want to throw it out there. So let's all think good thoughts when they repair the Pacific Valley Bank building. I noticed the storm brought down that stucco and exposed the original adobe wall to the Alvarado home. So I would hope when they repair it that they'll leave like a little window of that original adobe wall open. They can cover it in a nice, there's a nice acrylic you can buy now that's designed for that kind of thing. So we can all see it and really see historic Monterey.
Be good.
Yeah, there you go. Well, they do at the brick house.
Yeah, the chapel too.
Yeah. So I guess with that said, I adjourn the meeting.
Well done. Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well,